What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to episode 29 of The Attachment Confessions. It's your girl Chelsea here, and as per usual, I am so glad you decided to tune in today. And just in case you're an Attachment Confessions first timer, let me fill you in on what the pod is all about. From the moment I discovered attachment science, everything about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. And now I'm figuring out what it takes to earn my attachment security and have the best possible relationships from now on. Here on the Attachment Confessions, we'll be diving into all things attachment science while you guys tag along on my attachment healing adventure. My hope is that by bringing attachment science to those of you who have never heard of it before, and by sharing my own story, you'll also be inspired to set out on your own attachment healing journey. Healing from your past and learning how to love and be loved in a healthy way is 100% possible. So, if having the best relationships of your life is your goal, just like it is mine, you're in the right place. Quick reminder, you can now grab my free attachment conversation guide for couples. You guys, I put this guide together to help you have the tough conversations you've probably been avoiding. At the root of every issue is our attachment style. And when we don't understand each other's needs and wants and fears, it can feel truly terrifying and almost impossible to talk to one another about these things. And that's exactly what this guide is for. So, reach out to me on my Instagram at The Attachment Confessions or email Chelsea at theattachmentconfessions.com and I'll get the guide in your hands. All right, we're in the middle of our summer guest series, and it has been fire, y'all. And today, I am super excited to introduce you to Justin Smith. Justin spent almost a decade in a marriage with someone he thought he knew completely, only to discover years of deception that flipped his entire reality completely upside down overnight. Looking back, he realized there were some significant red flags from the beginning that he should have paid closer attention to. But just like so many of us with insecure attachments, he brushed them aside. Justin's story may have seemed like it was over after his world came crashing down all around him. But instead of letting it ruin him, he decided to build something bigger from it, an app to help the world track and reveal red flags in relationships. I am literally obsessed with a real life phoenix rising from the ashes story, and I know you guys will be inspired too. So let's get to my convo with Justin Smith, the founder of Cray app. Welcome to the Attachment Confessions, Justin. I am so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. When you first reached out about us collaborating on an episode, it took me like seriously point 0.5 seconds of checking out who you are and what you're doing to be like, oh, yeah, we definitely need to have you on the pod because your story is so fascinating. Where you are today and what you're building to help others with your app, given all that you've experienced in your childhood and with your family, and then in your romantic relationships, which we'll be getting into, it's absolutely incredible. And I am super pumped for my listeners to hear your story and to learn more about the Cray app. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, of course. I feel like, that's one of my, I don't want to say responsibilities, but, going through what I did, I feel like a lot of people can learn from my life story and kind of how I managed to get through it and how I managed to come out the other side with such a great tool for other people.
Absolutely. So, okay, we'll talk about the app you built, Cray, but first, tell us about the relationship that led to you building Cray.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, my partner of 8 years decided to blindside me and essentially blow up the marriage in a way that was not consistent with the values that she had instilled for the 8 years. And when she blew it up, something didn't sit right with me. And so I started looking at the facts and I realized she had transferred tens of thousands of dollars days and weeks leading up to the event And the previous year, she had also spent trying to transfer the house into her name and get her name on the title. And the more I dug, the more that there were just these horrific data points that, this was not someone that was engaged in a real relationship, or that, there was not real love. It was someone who saw me as a meal ticket and was using this as an opportunity to self enrich and also try and ruin my life as a like revenge plot. So, needless to say, it was really disorienting. I lost 40 pounds in 6 weeks. My blood pressure was 180 over 120. My resting heart rate was 100 beats per minute, and I was having suicidal thoughts. So I checked myself into a trauma treatment center, one of the top PTSD places in the US, and really dove into all parts of myself, trying to kind of figure out what happened and lick my wounds and get the support I needed to recover from such a big deal like that. And while I was there, I started looking at the red flags and realized I missed a lot, and realized I was in a position to kind of create a tool set to help other people so that in the future, younger versions of me or you could have a tool set that, keeps them safe, or at least judging the situation with clarity.
Oh my gosh. That is seriously unimaginable. I mean, losing 40 pounds in 6 weeks and having your blood pressure just go completely bonkers off the charts like that from this emotionally traumatic experience that just not by your hand, but in your lap overnight, like, that is seriously so horrible. I'm sure that you just gave, like, the ultimate Cliff's Notes version of what you went through, right? I bet what you experienced throughout those 8 years could take up our entire episode. Looking back, when did you first notice red flags? What were those initial red flags where now you're like, "Oh, shoulda seen that one."
Yeah, it's funny. I think back to one specific situation where it was the first time I'd introduced her to my kids. And this sounds silly, it sounds stupid, but it's one of those like small things that represents a larger issue. I had always told my kids that Justin Bieber was a not great person, for lack of a better term, just because of things he had done in his life publicly, that my kids kind of would see these news stories about, him driving that car and being crazy and all these things. Well, she shows up and is like, no, Justin Bieber's great. Your dad's wrong, blah, 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 blah. And in my mind at that moment, it was like wait a second, why are you inserting yourself as this beacon of truth to my kids? In reality, in a situation where I'm introducing you to my children, you should be supporting whatever I'm saying because these are my kids, and you should support that relationship of me being the source of truth.
Mm.
It sounds small in hindsight, but to me, that was the first moment where I was like, "Wait a second, this doesn't feel right." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because as I say in a lot of times, smaller little signs like that, it may be a small issue, but the
Mhm.
decision pattern and thought process behind it is what you're seeing bubble up to the surface. And you're realizing that this isn't someone that really cares about you or your values or what you're presenting to the people around you. This is
Mhm.
someone who just wants control or just wants to undermine your authority or undermine your relationships. So looking back on it, that was, the first instance. But the more pattern I would say is not validating me or my experience in different situations. If you're going through something horrific or something painful and you go to your partner and you're like, my God, this is terrible. Like, this is awful. I'm feeling horrible. And they're like, it's not a big deal. What are you talking about? Toughen up, buttercup. And then you get that for 8 years. That's not going to be a healthy or good situation for your self confidence or the feeling of self worth.
Yeah, and that makes you constantly question, like, "Okay, am I just having big feelings because I'm overly sensitive and I can't handle my emotions?" You know, you start to feel crazy when you're constantly being told that your feelings are totally wrong. What did your life look like before the truth of who you were in a relationship with came out? Was it relatively normal, or were there a lot of things that you were like, this just doesn't feel right? And then everything finally came to a head when you discovered all of the betrayal.
There were a lot of things that didn't feel right because I didn't feel respected in the relationship or marriage pretty much the entire time.
Hmm.
And I think that those disrespects are like paper cuts. They're not big enough to be like, oh my God, I'm breaking up with you, but it's still enough to hurt and sting, and it still adds up to a painful experience. But it's never anything big enough to really pull the trigger and say, all right, I'm done. I'm getting out of this relationship. So, in some ways, I do think that, I missed or I overlooked things. But when something like this blew up, it was like too big to ignore. And, big situations like this really do show who someone is. How someone responds in conflict is immensely telling of what kind of person you're dealing with. And this was a situation where there was no empathy, no remorse, no nothing. It was just kind of like, get over it. Why are you so upset?
My gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's death by a thousand paper cuts over time, but then when crap hits the fan with something huge that you just cannot ignore, cannot brush under the rug, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, all these little signs were here for so long." And then you start blaming yourself like, why did I put up with this for so long? Why did I ignore things? And that's not fair to yourself. There's people out there that are master manipulators. But then people like you and I end up blaming ourselves for allowing ourselves to fall for those types of people, right? So,
That's one reason I put self love and boundaries really high on my totem pole of things that I try and instill for myself in my life, like my value set.
mhm.
Because then afterwards, after these situations, you don't feel that same sense of shame or like, why did I allow this to happen? Because you're not really like overstepping your boundaries or overstepping your values. You're staying within a place that you're happy about.
Mhm.
So that's one of the tough things I think is after a relationship like the one I was in, afterwards it's all self-blame because you realize like, holy crap, I was living outside of what I was comfortable with and I was tolerating all this behavior and I just let it go. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those learning lessons that, moving forward, you start living differently afterwards because you start realizing, the Achilles heel of your dating experience are these little issues or these major issues, so to speak.
Yeah, but the thing about that is that it can also propel us into a very jaded, cynical space to where you're like, what's the point? Nobody is trustworthy. I only can rely on myself. And then you shut yourself off from potentially experiencing a true, healthy love. So it's a fine balance, right?
Oh, it is. It's recovering from an experience, where you lose part of yourself is always a fun experience of rediscovery and growth. In some ways, I kind of like the rebuilding because you kind of get to redefine who you are and what you stand for. And it kind of is a fun exercise to figure out, where are your values? One of the things I had to do when I went to treatment for those 60 days was to choose what were my value set. So we had to choose three different words that defined us as a person. And mine were family, kindness, and loyalty. And those are the three values I have chosen to represent who I am. So, going through some crash and burn experiences do have a bright side where it forces you to redefine kind of what you're about as a person and really reflect on those things. Because,
Mhm.
amidst the chaos, you have to come back to clarity. And so, what is that clarity?
And if we look at it through an attachment theory lens, if you have an insecure attachment, especially our anxious, preoccupied friends or fearful avoidance that naturally lean more on the anxious side of their attachment, they have a very hard time taking that solitary time to reflect and just kind of sit with themselves and figure out, okay, who do I want to be moving forward? Who do I want to allow access to me moving forward? Because they have such a deep fear of abandonment and need for validation and reassurance. So it's so hard for them to stay single and in that place of, no, I need to take this time to myself for a season to really reflect and to heal and to work on myself. They're notorious for almost immediately rushing into dating as a way to band aid or Xanax their pain. And especially whenever someone comes out of a really, really traumatic and life altering relationship like what you went through, it does ultimately take time for you to be able to heal. Don't try to avoid going directly into the pain. That's necessary to experience to actually heal. But you've described your situation as disorienting. How do you trust your own judgment after all of that? And I totally feel that. I totally feel that. I know that whenever we initially met, I shared briefly about a decade long relationship that I was in that ultimately, by the time it got to the point where I finally realized, like, bro, what is your life? What does it come to? Like, you have been being held hostage in your own life. Thank God I finally got out of that situation. But it was very disorienting, because so many people are like, Chelsea, you're the last person that I would ever expect to put up with a tiny percentage of what you actually put up with that nobody was aware. Nobody still is aware, of the extent of what I dealt with and went through and put up with and experienced in that relationship. But it is very disorienting, because I view myself as someone who is strong and confident and doesn't put up with other people's crap. But then I did for 10 years, right? So, how long did it take you to process what happened? And I know that that journey included you having to do some really deep reflective work, going to a rehabilitation center. But where are you at? How long ago was that from when that journey first started to today?
So that was about 2 years. I went to April 2024 is when I went to the treatment center, and I was there for 2 months until June 2024.
Okay.
Once I got out, I continued to do dialectical behavior therapy. I wholeheartedly believe that is an amazing tool set for people who are dealing with recovering from trauma. It's a set
Okay.
of exercises by Marsha Linehan, who was a psychologist, and she created a set of tools such as interpersonal effectiveness, emotional regulation, somatic recognition, and breathing exercises, dialectical thinking, which is two opposing views can both be true on the same event. And this collection of exercises was created for people to relearn how to be a human, but using the best tools and tips of how to do those different things. There's a lot of exercises in the DBT book. So that was a big part of my recovery, I would say, talk therapy too. In terms of where I am, I would say I'm still going through a lot, unfortunately. I think we talked a little bit about this, which makes it very challenging. But I've
Mhm.
fixed the dysfunctional parts of me that led to a lot of problems, such as responding in a dysregulated way when I would get overwhelmed by people trying to mess with my life. People who are messing with my life right now keep trying to do that in hopes that I'll become overwhelmed. But I'm a different person now, so I don't respond to things the same way.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you almost die and you go through a situation like I did, I wholeheartedly felt that I was in a race against the clock and that if I didn't fix these things that I was going to die. It
Mhm.
was a very disorienting feeling to wake up one day and your life, every piece of it was a lie. And all the people that were there for you were illusions. And so that was a very, a difficult thing to recover from. But luckily, I had the tools kind of in place to get my mind headed in the right direction. And I just kept layering on top of that to ensure that I was getting the help I needed and that, I was giving myself grace in terms of, my progress in the situation.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a
That's
lot.
a huge piece to it too, is being able to give yourself that grace and forgive yourself, because there's a big period of time where you're just beating yourself up, right, for allowing it. So being able to get to a place where you can give yourself that grace and that self-love is huge.
Well, and also giving yourself the grace that you're not progressing completely to being recovered immediately. Like this
Right.
isn't going to be like I went to treatment, I'm better. 60 days is all I needed. Now every part of my life is fixed. And that's not really how
Exactly.
it works. It's just that you learn
Mhm.
the tools to be able to put it in place, but you still have to be mindful and present and focused on containing yourself and keeping the right path in terms of how you process these things, in terms of how you respond, in terms of the support you're getting, and what kinds of support you might need to be able to make it through the difficult periods where everything's escalating. It's almost like being a conductor of an orchestra and having all these different instruments that you have to control to make sure that the song sounds great.
Yeah, that is a really great analogy. There are so many different moving parts and it takes work. It's not just a matter of awareness, it's a matter of actually putting those practices into place whenever you start to feel like your nervous system getting triggered or getting overwhelmed or getting flooded, all of those feelings. There's a lot of different tools that come together to help with that process. So, at what point did you go from, I need to heal from this, to, I need to do something to prevent other people from going through what I've gone through? Like, what was that light bulb moment?
I'll try not to get emotional every time this comes up. It's hard for me, but I would spend every night crying myself to sleep and just, why is this happening to me? And trying to find meaning in that, I came to the realization that I wasn't going to let this be for nothing. That, this was going to be the thing that like got me to save the world or change the world or help other
Mhm,
people. I wasn't
mhm,
going to be that story where the period is at the end of me having my life fall apart. And I was going to make all the people who wish to see me fail see that I am so much better without them, that they cannot go around to all the people that we shared in common and tell them that I'm doing worse without them. And so it was a mixture of those things, knowing that I had no one to come rescue me, knowing that no one was going to come save me, knowing that I was sitting there feeling this awful feeling, and there had to be a way out of it. Like I couldn't just let it end on this. And so that was the turning point for me, sitting there crying and saying, I'm not going to allow this to be what this story is about. It's going to be about something else. And
mhm.
so I decided from there forward to build this product and help people and make this be a story of, a phoenix rising and coming out of the ashes and accomplishing something amazing.
Do you have a background in software development? Is that then how
Kind
you came
of.
up with the idea for doing this app?
Well, so I have an undergraduate degree in design and multimedia development, and then I have my graduate degree in business with a focus on entrepreneurship. When I worked at the family business, I did a lot of project management for the website, for apps that we developed that were my idea. One of which was the first concussion recognition app for the iPhone in 2011. So it was an app that parents could use to mark the signs and symptoms they were observing in a child after they got hit in the head. And it would give parents the ability to diagnose a concussion.
Oh,
So
wow.
because I
How
had done
fascinating.
that, yeah, so because I had done that, it's basically the same format for Cray. When I sat thinking through it, I was like, I can just use the same yes or no sign and symptom type format for recognizing red flags in, the people you date, and give people a tool that would really help them objectively think through the partners they're dating. Because in this
Mhm.
world we live in, it's, you look good, let me swipe one way or another, or it's, maybe you go on the relationship sites, not the hookup sites, but even still, you're looking at this much data about this person and making a decision about whether or not you want to go out with them based on that. And that's
Exactly.
not great criteria. So I felt like there was this big hole,
Mm.
in terms of people's ability to see clearly who they're dealing with, and who's coming into their life, and what kind of person that is, and what kind of good or bad they can bring from that. Because when you let someone into your world, it's either going to make your world great, or it's going to ruin you in the worst
Mm.
way. And so I'd rather be able to help people go towards that positive outcome and get rid of all this negativity. Because,
Mm.
like, think about the wasted night of getting dressed up, of, getting your hopes up, of going out to dinner, and you get there and the guy is being rude to the wait staff, or he, is getting hammered off of, 6 drinks through dinner. And these things do have warning signs. So if I can help
Mhm.
people avoid it, way further upstream, then I'm going to help people live happier lives. So that was kind of the cool thing about this, was I can really save people a lot of pain. There's already almost 1,000 users on the platform, and to think that I'm creating, joy, or eliminating some pain from 1,000 lives is crazy to think about.
It really is. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. And I am big on the phrase character is greater than chemistry. And I love Cray's tagline, vibes lie, patterns don't. It's so good. Where did that come from, and what does it mean to you personally, given what you went through?
The first tagline was no sooner date better. And then I realized that this product can be used for not just dating, it can be used for friendships, it can be used for your boss, it can be used for your roommate, it can be used for anyone you're dealing with. And so I realized I had to change the tagline, because I didn't want to pigeonhole the product into just a dating product.
Okay.
So I started looking at other taglines, and that one stuck out to me because of the fact that it gets on two issues. Your impression of whoever you're dealing with is not accurate. This is the real way to do it. That's the general idea I'm trying to send to people when they see the tagline.
Mm.
Because everyone, inherently in your brain, you feel a vibe from someone. And people usually use that as their criteria for how to evaluate a partner. But what is that based on? What data are you doing that with? I wanted to get a tagline that the logo shows what the product is, the tagline makes the promise to you. I wanted to make sure that when people see the logo and tagline, they have no doubts about what the product does or what it's promising to you in terms of, the solution it provides.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I have to ask this because some people might hear an app to screen your date and feel like it's a bit much, or it's cynical, or you're paranoid. But in this day and age, I feel like you can never be too cautious.
Yeah, and I feel like if you go to buy a TV online, what's your first thing you do? You go read the
Look-
reviews. You look
Yeah,
at the
yeah, yeah.
technical specs, you look and see what the TV can do, and see if it suits you.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't you do that with dating? Why wouldn't you want to
Yeah.
get a deeper understanding of the person you're dating? Because you're not a psychologist. In the back of your head, you
Mhm.
don't have 80 red flags that you can evaluate them on. You don't
Mhm.
have 40 or 50 schemer score items. You don't have another 50 or so base score items. You're looking at a lot of data points that, people in terms of how they evaluate their dating partners, don't look at all of these. And
Mhm.
so it gives people the full checklist of if you're going to be evaluating someone as your partner or someone who you want to spend time with, use this whole list. You don't have to care about all of them. You can decide which ones are not or are meaningful to you.
Right.
But I still wanted to create a product that gave people that same clarity that you get with any other decision you make. The
Mhm.
car you buy, the TV you buy, the house you move into, the clothes you wear, the media you consume. You're going to go look up reviews of the movie you want to watch. You're going to go look up reviews of the video game. So, why is it any different with dating? It shouldn't be. It should
Mhm.
be the same process where you get to decide this is who's standing in front of me based upon all the information I have. I should be able to decide based on that if I want to date him or not. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the mindset I have is, this is a tool to provide clarity and give people some granularity to determine which person's better. I mean, the way I see Cray headed is down the road. I would love to turn this into like a wingman chatbot type thing. And people just talk about who they're dating and what the experience is like. And in the background, it collects all the data and compares it to what you're looking for in a relationship. And then it can advise you on who's the best match out of the partners you've been checking out, or if any of them are a good match.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I feel like, if I'm telling people what to look out for, I also have to be the guiding force of getting them to, the good place. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where I'm looking at Cray in the future pathway. Is now that I've gotten the schemer score, I've gotten the Cray score, I've gotten the offender check, the catfish check. All these data points are now this whole universe of understanding of the people you're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. So cool. So you just mentioned the different reports, the Cray score, schemer score, Bay score, catfish check, and offender check. So can you give us a quick breakdown of what each of those is for and when someone would use those?
Sure. So the Cray score is the red flags in a relationship. It's just you responding yes, no, or not sure to a list of behaviors that we outline. The schemer score is the same thing. It's a bunch of other behaviors, but it gets at deception, manipulation, financial fraud, those kinds of things.
Mm.
And then Catfish Check is an in app purchase. I have to pay for the data, so I have to charge for it, but it's a phone number lookup of your choosing. And it gives you a report if that's a real phone number, if it's used for fraud, that kind of stuff. And then the offender check, I have to also pay for. It's an in app purchase. And you get to look up in the state of your choosing against the name of your choosing if someone is a sex offender. So it
Mm.
provides some resources for people to look up. I'm also adding a new feature in the next update, which I call the photo scan. So people can upload a photo and it'll run some algorithm on it to determine if there's AI use in the photo or, updating the photo through manipulation or whatever. And also compare it against the Cray score and schemer score to see if there's anything that pops up in the picture against those items.
Oh,
So,
wow.
really trying to add in some really good features and also create interventions in these features. So, for example,
Mm.
there's now an SOS button in the top right corner, so someone can hit that and it'll connect them to 911. And then also, there's going to be when it pops up and gives the highest about runaway, it's going to offer to dial 911 for that too. So the goal
Okay.
is to make this into a one-stop shop. You live in the app as you evaluate your partners, and pop-ups come up to intervene if bad things happen. So
Wow, so cool. Okay. What's the Bay score? Because not everybody is a walking red flag, right? So I'm assuming that that means that they check more positive boxes than cautionary ones.
yeah, the base score is green flags like healthy communication and things like that. It's really the ideal qualities you want in a partner. Cray started as a safety app, but then I
Mhm.
realized that this is an opportunity to also inform people what to look out for that are good things in a relationship. Because if I sit here and say, no, that's scary, that's scary, that's scary, that's scary, am I really doing a great service because then I would just be creating fearful people. So I really just wanted to kind of balance it out and give a full picture so you really can see both the good and bad in
Yeah.
the situation and use that information to decide who you want to be with.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, full transparency, I haven't personally used Cray, simply because I haven't even attempted to date since my last relationship ended a year ago. So, can you walk us through how Cray works?
Sure. So I designed it for people that have either met in person, have not met in person, are romantically interested in each other, or not romantically interested in each other. So when you go to fill out the Cray score, it asks you those questions in the beginning. And then you respond to statements yes, no, not sure, which could be things like I met them when I was a minor, or it could be things like they are not kind to me during physical intimacy or do things I don't agree to during physical intimacy. Or it could be things like they don't validate my feelings during conflict. But each of these items are weighted differently. So one might have a weight of 3, and the other might have a weight of 5, because some of these matter a lot more in terms of the happiness, health, and safety of the relationship. So you then get a report that outlines which of the red flags were noticed in the situation and why they matter in terms of the happiness, health, and safety of the relationship. You also get a score and a recommendation. If it's a really bad relationship, it says run away. The next level below it is consider leaving. And then there's a few other levels below that. If anything is a risk to emotional safety, consider leaving is all automatically triggered. If anything's a threat to physical safety, run away is automatically triggered. So the goal is to really
Mhm.
create not just the items, but also a decision set based upon the items so that people understand that those should be lines in the sand. If someone's not being, emotionally kind to you and is being emotionally abusive, that is enough to get out of there. You shouldn't stay in that situation.
Absolutely. Okay. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the schemer score specifically. That's the one that you said is for detecting manipulation and deception, which hits really close to home for me, given that relationship that I previously mentioned. And I'm sure this probably hits close to home to a lot of our listeners too. So, how does that score work?
It's also behavior observation. It's just that the items have to do with specifically those areas. Because what I realized after I came out of treatment was that there's two sets of issues really online. Are there red flags in someone's behavior, or is someone just trying to use me? And so schemer score gets at that. The are they trying to use me piece. Because that's such a common thing nowadays, especially on the dating apps, especially on Tinder, where it's like a fake profile that, I just want to make sure I protect people because there's going to be people who are either 18 that literally have no idea that this stuff happens, or it could be someone 55 who's been married for 30 years, who now is, single again, who's going back on dating apps and is getting slammed left and right by all these scams and other stuff. So,
Mm,
that's why schemer score was put in there is because there's just such a huge dishonesty piece to online dating
mhm.
that I really had to make sure I tried to protect people from that.
Yeah. So, how does the app protect the privacy of both the person running the reports and using the app to evaluate potential partners, as well as the person that's being assessed?
Well, it's all private, so this is not like T, where it's a public shaming and defamation app. Everything you answer on your phone stays on your phone and is private to you. The people will not see it, they don't get notified, nothing like that. The way I like to couch it is this is a self improvement dating app in the sense that it's all about improving your ability to date. There's even the ability to self assess in the app. So you can fill out a Cray score on yourself to see how you're showing up in the relationship. So, a cool thing to do for couples would be for one person to fill it out about themselves, the other person to fill it out about themselves, and they fill it out about each other and have a conversation around that. Because how are each of
Compare
you
notes.
showing up? Was that?
Compare notes.
Well, yeah, just because, like, think about all the relation conflicts that couples have where each of them think it's the other one who's the problem. Well, this at least allows a third party to come in that's not a marriage counselor and maybe provide some understanding about what's happening and what's showing up in the relationship.
Interesting. Okay. So, from what you've seen building Cray and talking to users, what are the most common red flags that people tend to miss early in the stages of dating?
I would say love bombing is one that people don't usually recognize right away, especially young people, because it feels so much like young love, kind
Mhm.
of.
Feels amazing for those that are insecurely attached. You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is awesome," but it's like, "Oh, no, that's a red flag."
Well, and it also feels so good, I think, to
Mhm.
people to receive such attention from someone and adoration that they get drugged by it, so to speak, and then are left trying to figure out what happened and how they missed it. Because, in the beginning, when you meet someone, you want to believe that this is the person you've been looking for. And those manipulators are great at utilizing that to advance what they're trying to happen.
Yeah. I have an entire episode dedicated to love bombing, and not everybody that love bombs is a manipulator, is a narcissist, is someone that you need to run for the hills from, right? People can love bomb just because they're anxiously attached and fall in love, quote unquote, really easily with people that they meet and think like, "Oh, this is the real thing." But it's also like, "Okay, pump the brakes. You don't know me yet." So, it's definitely something to be cautious of, and whether they're a full-blown narcissist that are using it as a manipulation tactic, or if they're just insecurely attached and need to learn like, "Oh, okay, I need to slow my roll." There's definitely some space in there for it to not be a total full-blown red flag when it comes to love bombing, but it's definitely something that if you notice, to have a conversation with the person that's love bombing and see how their reaction is to you bringing it to the forefront, and if they get very defensive and turn it around on you, then that's like, okay, you are probably using this as a manipulation tactic rather than someone who's just innocently thinks that they're in love with you and just need to be told, like, hey, can we pump the brakes a little bit? And then they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, sounds good. Right.
That's the interesting thing, I think, is I don't want to use the word confront, but when act curious about certain behaviors, people's
Mhm.
responses tell you a lot about their motivations, their authenticity or not. I use the term get curious about it just because it always keeps that I'm just trying to understand and it doesn't get accusatory.
Right.
But yeah, it is interesting with these manipulators if you call attention to it. They
Mhm.
don't like that.
Oh, definitely not. You're blowing their whole plot up. Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, and it's like they want to believe they can get away with it and steal out of your pocket and get away with it and feel like they're sneaky and not get called out for it. So people don't
Mhm.
like owning their stuff.
Yeah. What are some other red flags that people miss early on?
I use the non-validation of your experience or your world because that's a big one. Some people can be really good at jokingly playing off their lack of validation of your experience. But if they're still not validating you or your worldview or your experience, that's going to be very problematic. I just think it's one that people don't usually pick up on. I know I didn't because I was enamored with the person I was dating, and we always had a very playful, jokey back and forth, and so my brain just didn't really
Mhm.
pick up on it. I don't think. Hindsight's always 2020, though. Everything stands out like a sore thumb afterwards.
If that's happening early on in the relationship, it's not gonna get any better. somebody who's just dismissing your feelings and wants to, say like, oh, you're being dramatic, or that's not a big deal, or oh my gosh, you're so sensitive. Like, that's not going to get better as the relationship progresses, right?
No, because they're going to become more intolerant of you and all the other stuff they've had to put up with, and it gets to the point where they're just going to become even worse in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
I don't know. I think
sure.
in hindsight, we could probably extrapolate a lot of good decisions that we wish we had made, but I think that the best you can do, and this is something I've learned, is just learn from the mistakes you've made and be honest with yourself about how you're approaching life, how you're approaching dating. Are you ready to date? Are you in a good situation, mentally fit to be, vulnerable to another human being? Uh, I know I'm not in a place to, so that's, part of the healing journey is keeping your finger on the pulse and knowing if you're in a good place yet or not.
Well, I think the fact that you have that radical clarity with yourself and that radical honesty of like, hey, I'm still healing. Like, I'm still in the thick of it. I've come a long way from 2 years ago when all of this first went down, right? But I'm still not in a place where the best version of myself is going to contribute to a relationship. You know, two broken people coming together does not make one whole
Yeah.
person, right? It makes chaos times two. So I think the fact that you have that level of emotional maturity now, especially since you've shared that you do have more of an anxious attachment style, that's huge. That's so huge, and that shows a whole lot of growth that has happened over the last couple years, because like, hey, no, I still have more to go, and so I don't need to bring this version of myself into a relationship. I need to keep healing and keep growing, and then I can worry about sharing my world with somebody else, and hopefully at that point being the best version of myself that I ever have been, and vice versa. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it takes being mindful and present and just being honest with yourself. I think that's a mistake people make is sometimes they like to tell themselves storylines to justify their behavior rather than owning the ugliness of it and saying, "Look,
Mm.
I'm emotionally not in a place. I'm not healthy to be, jumping back in." And admitting that to ourselves is challenging sometimes.
Mm-hmm. For sure. What's the difference between a genuine red flag and something that might just be a quirk, or they're having a bad day and maybe acted a little bit out of character? How does Cray help people make that distinction?
Well, I think people in a relationship should use it in the sense of a snapshot in time. And you're going to want to keep filling it out throughout the relationship to see if those fluctuations in the situation are due to personality issues. Is this who they really are? Was it because their aunt died the previous week and they literally were just having a bad week? One single answer of Cray should not be the end all be all. However, it does give you kind of a guiding point to determine what do I need to be looking out for? What is showing up right now? And what do I need to be mindful about and hold this person accountable or determine if this is the situation I'm looking for?
And noticing those patterns, right, rather than a one off situation here and there, that's key, because, like your tagline says, vibes lie, patterns don't. So, if it is a problem, continual problem that's going to rear its ugly head over and over again, it's not just going to be a one off, it's going to be a continual issue that you see. And that's something to be cognizant of.
Oh, for sure. Especially because when you first meet someone, my friend had this great saying when you first date someone, you meet their representative. You don't meet the actual person, you meet their representative. that inherently means you're not getting the real person. And so you really have to look for these little data points, like the Justin Bieber thing, that I mentioned earlier. It
Poor
sounds stupid.
JB, just getting roasted on the attachment confessions. He doesn't even know.
Well, and the worst part
I'm
about
just
it, if we're being honest, is his background. He has trauma, and that's why he
kidding.
was acting that
God.
way. And that goes on to show you, if you don't heal from your trauma, it will ruin
Mhm.
your life, and it will eat
Yeah.
you alive, and it will lead to drug addiction, and it will lead to these other unhealthy, lifestyle decisions. And
Yeah.
in hindsight, I feel bad for the guy
Oh,
living that life
absolutely.
and having to go
Mhm.
through that. uh,
Mhm.
but a partner who does not respect your boundaries, especially to your kids, that's crazy talk. I should
Yeah.
have been like, all right, we're wrapping it up, and that should have been it and have been done, and I would have saved myself from all this pain.
Yeah.
Is
Hindsight
what it
is
is. Yeah.
2020. Ugh. So speaking of, okay, you say informed trust is stronger trust, and I love that so much. Can you expand on what that means and why you believe that so deeply?
Well, yeah, I feel that we should be informed about the decisions we're making, including the people we trust. I feel that so much of our life is spent trusting people just based on a word, like just them promising to us. Is
Hmm.
that good enough these days, especially with 8 billion people or whatever on this earth, and all the social media and everything else, where we're getting exposed to people that could ruin our lives? I think
Hmm.
we live in a society these days where you have to be informed about the decisions you make, because the cost is too high to
Hmm.
do that without trying to be smart about it.
Yeah, and especially for my fellow fearful avoidance out there, we just have a hard time trusting people because we honestly have a hard time trusting ourselves. Whenever you can be better informed of these potential red flags to look out for, and also the green flags to be aware of too, that helps create a stronger sense of trust in other people that deserve that trust, but also a stronger sense of trust in ourselves of like, hey, no, I can make the right decisions. I can look out for certain things and ask questions and be curious and not come across accusatory, right? But like you said, have that more like curious approach when something happens or they say something or they do something that makes you perk your ears up a little, right?
Yeah, and I think accountability is big too, just in a relationship. Just that curiosity and accountability. Because if you stay curious about why things are happening and both partners are accountable, then that can get you to a much better relationship. Because both
Yeah.
people are showing up honestly and focused on treating it more like it's a relationship with the goal in mind of resolution and
Yeah.
and and betterment of the relationship, which is immensely important. A lot of
Mhm.
people choose conflict in relationships as a who's right in the situation, and all that does is drive each other apart. It's unfortunate. So I
Mhm.
love hearing accountability and openness and all those kinds of things, because it all leads to a healthier, better relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a user story or a piece of feedback that you've received since launching Cray that's really stuck with you?
There's two different stories that have happened. One where someone that I was friends with told me it provided them clarity in their relationship and got them out of their own head, because they were the type of person that would overthink and overpick and over worry. And so the
Mm.
app being that mirror to look at and answer these things and provide feedback was important and helpful to her, because it let her get out of her head. Another funny story I heard was Cray was on the University of Tampa's campus as an incubator company at their entrepreneurship center. And one of the other businesses that was in the incubator told me that her friend had downloaded the app, didn't know that she knew me. Like, her friend didn't know that the girl knew me. And she ended up breaking up with her boyfriend because it outlined some bad behavior he was doing. And so
Mm.
to hear that was interesting because that is the effect that this app should have. If people are not showing up right in relationships and the person suffering, and I'll use that word because I don't know this relationship or whatever, but to hear that it had that outcome where the person who was feeling some kind of way had their experience validated by the app enough to feel that they should exit the relationship, that was really cool too to hear about because it showed that it was giving them the clarity that I had hoped it would.
Exactly. Well, I love how both of those examples have two different results because, again, not everybody is a walking on fire red flag. And then obviously the other example is, exactly why you created the app to help save somebody from potential harm and danger and all this time that they could be spending on a person that is not going to be good for them in the long run. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think hearing that one and realizing there's people that could get out of wasting decades of their life with the wrong person is a good thing.
Oh gosh, absolutely. I told you this when we first talked. I could have used Cray a long time ago, and it could have saved me from potentially a decade of madness. So, yeah. Okay, so where can listeners find and download Cray? Is it on both Apple and Android?
Yes, it is, and we actually have a web version too.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all three getting an update, a facelift in the next couple of weeks. As I showed you before we got on, I have the app on my
Mhm.
phone and testing. It's just a matter of making tweaks to it, and then once that's done, all three versions will have a new look with a bunch of new features that people can check out, including an SOS button. The base score is going to be added in that one. And then there's a photo scan feature so people can upload photos and use it to evaluate the photos too.
You showed me what it's gonna be looking like when it rolls out here in a couple weeks, and it looks so awesome. It looks very user-friendly, but it's also very aesthetically pleasing. Like, I love it. So, I'm excited
Thank
for you,
you.
and I'm excited for, the people that can download it and use it, and it potentially help them either know that they don't need to be freaked out by the person they're dating, or yeah, I do in fact need to reevaluate this relationship or this connection that I have made with this person. So I love that.
We're actually going to be on 14 college campuses starting in the fall. We have partnerships with 14, total student population of about 200,000 students in those schools. And then I have 8 other brand ambassadors on other campuses for an additional 250,000 students. So the
Oh, that's
goal is,
amazing.
yeah, I'm going to be hopefully on 500,000 student type campuses. They're putting up posters in their public spaces and things like that, passing out merch to their students. The goal is to make fall be the rocket launch point for the app and really scale up how much we're helping people. So, trying to bake it into orientation on college campuses, help them create safety for their students.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting and it's so needed. Hearing stories of people that have been to hell and back and hell and back and hell and back a number of times and using that as fuel to not let yourself stay stuck and give up, but to be like, you know what? I'm actually going to do something with this pain. There is a purpose to it. So instead of just like falling on my sword and surrendering, instead making something from it that can actually impact people in such a positive, unique way. And I just commend you for doing that. It's really incredible.
Thank you. It feels amazing to be in a position where I went from crying my eyes out every night to being on the edge to possibly changing the world. And to think that I went from one to the other within 2 years is just crazy to me. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the support and the recognition because I look at this situation kind of with the same awe and humility of just this is crazy. I can't believe this is my life, you know?
Yes, it's so inspiring.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Are there any special instructions that you want to give to listeners that are like, okay, I've got to check this app out?
So a few warnings. You do have to register using your phone number. And when you do rate people, it does it by contacts in your phone. Some people don't like that because they assume that I'm going to go out and share this data. The real point of it is to gain insights of people's behavior and what are some of the major red flags and how they're showing up to create some better understanding around marketing and other things, but also product features. The goal is to really gain a better understanding about people's behavior, and that's why that happens. But for the people that haven't tried the app yet, I want you to think of it in terms of the worst relationship you've been in. The first time you use the app, open it up, rate that person or that relationship, I should say, that you were in that was your worst one, and see how it would have impacted your decision making. Is this an app that would have saved you? Is it one that would have given you clarity? Is it one that would have, been the voice of reason during a time that was very painful for you? I think the answer
Mm.
will be yes to those questions, and I hope that people feel the same way. I don't think that this is a product that people can check out and feel that it has no use in the world. Once you use it the first time, it just changes the way you think about dating and what you should want for yourself out of dating.
Definitely brings that level of self awareness to the table and situational awareness and awareness of others that oftentimes can get clouded in the excitement of meeting somebody new that you're into.
100%. When we meet that new person, we don't see the red flags. We're seeing how nice they look, or the kind things they're saying to us, or the personality that comes across that's just so enamoring. So this provides that clarity and that checklist that 6 months later, after a kid goes through the orientation at school and they were given a list of 100 things to look out for, they actually have the list in their phone now that they can, mark rather than trying to go off memory from 6, 12 months ago. So that's the cool thing too.
Super cool. I love that. Okay, and then so something fun for our attachment confessions fam. We've got some Cray swag that you have generously donated to give away to some lucky listeners. So, guys, listen up. Here are the instructions. First, you need to go on Instagram and follow at cray.app and at the attachment confessions if you aren't already following, of course. So that is step one. Step two, check out the attachment confessions Instagram. Look for the episode graphic for this particular episode, like it, tag 3 friends in the comments, and you and your 3 friends are eligible to potentially win some Cray swag. So we'll pick 3 winners. Your logo for the Cray app. I know I've already told you how adorable it is. It's this fox, and he's so cute. So you'll get some fun Cray swag if you follow both at the Attachment Confessions and Cray.app on Instagram. Like this post, tag 3 friends, and you might find yourself with a cute little takeaway from this episode. So thanks, Justin, for providing that.
Yeah, of course. Anything I can do to promote the app and also give your listeners something fun to get out of listening, that's always a plus.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for coming out on the other side and turning your pain into purpose and providing the world with something that's going to make it a better place and a safer place for people when they're dating. I can't say thanks enough.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the things I say to the schools we meet at the end of our meeting is thanks for helping make the world a better place with us. Because I feel like that's what we're doing. This is really a product that can help make the world a better place. So I appreciate you having me on here to talk about it.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you so much for spending your time here with us today. I know this topic is something that hits home with so many people. So please be a good friend and share this episode with anyone that needs to hear it. Also, if you could take a minute out of your day and do something that costs you absolutely nothing, but makes such a huge difference for this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. I would appreciate it so, so much. And don't forget, my DMs are always open, and I love hearing from you guys. So if you have any attachment questions or just want to pop in and say hi and let me know how attachment science has changed your life, I am here for it. I'll see you guys back here on the Attachment Confessions in just a couple weeks for our next summer series guest. It's going to be another good one, so you won't want to miss it. And don't forget, guys, healing your attachment is a choice. So just freaking choose it. Love you guys. Bye.